Goodness gracious me, Frank Leboeuf with us, as is Julien Laurens. Jules, would he do that sort of stuff in training as well? Frank, sorry.
It was...
Frank?
I mean, I can't even describe, how good the guy was. I mean, he was simply a magician. What we saw, and you showed only the Liga goals, but the Champions League final goal that he scored when they won it, the volley from a cross, a very high cross from Roberto Carlos, was the best of the best for me. When you scored a goal like that in the Champions League, I mean, it's because you belong to the rare football players who can reach the top of the top, and that guy was. And I saw stuff that he was doing in the training session. Well, everybody was fighting as defenders to be with him rather be against him, because you didn't want to be humiliated by him. And with all the smile, that's the worst.
Frank, you mentioned last year when you went out for dinner, of course, the '98 team, that Zizou couldn't really go out on the streets afterwards because it would just be manic.
Yeah, that was that day, and we had a fantastic dinner. And then after, we wanted to go for a drink, and we went with some players, but he decided to go back to his hotel. And he was wearing a cap, and I realized that life was impossible in Paris for him. And today, again, I never seen a player so much of a sport guy, so much celebrated by the media because of his birthday. Is the guy. If he wants to be the president of France, I think he can reach the spot. I think he can be elected. That's as simple as that.
Can we just show that picture again? Because it's interesting, obviously Zidane's 50th birthday. So to mark the occasion, Frank has put a picture of him, full face of Frank, and the back of Zidane's head.
Yes! Yes! Can I explain? Because that's the only picture that I have talking to Zizou. That's the rare picture, and it's just to show, because I put on the post that I made on Instagram that I'm telling him that he's never gonna overtake me because of my age. That's the only thing. I think it was funny to have that picture, because it shows the guy who did a fantastic documentary, also Mr. Meunier, about France '98, and that's a famous one that Jules knows about, called Les Yeux dans les Bleus, and that was just a clin d'œil, as we say.
Jules, take us back to you growing up and watching him.
Yeah, it was very special, of course. Even his time in France at Cannes first, when I was young in early '90s, then he moved to Bordeaux, where they achieved great things with that team and that generation of Lizarazu and Dugarry with him as well, of course, especially in the UEFA Cup, reaching the final. And then he moved away, of course, to Juventus, where the beginnings were a bit difficult. And then, of course, it all changed with the '98 World Cup and the 2000 Euros. The interview in L'Équipe, over 18 pages, is fascinating, of course. And he talks again about the 2000 competition. He said '98 was his year, really, and that was his final especially. But 2000, this team was, and Frank was a big part of it, of course. That team was unstoppable. Even if they won in a very unforgetting manner, that final against Italy, this was a team that was walking on water and walking on everybody else. And it was crazy. I had the pleasure of knowing him a little bit, meeting him, interviewing him recently before the pandemic, and what a great guy he was. And then you remember those moments. 2006, for example, was the first World Cup I ever covered, and he came back obviously after retiring in '04, came back in '05 to take the team to the World Cup. And then obviously that World Cup was iconic for so many reasons. One, because he carried that team all the way to the final, because there was that incredible individual performance against Brazil in the quarterfinal, which is, from what I've seen in my own eyes, sat in a stadium live, this is the best individual performance I've ever seen. He was just unstoppable. They could not come near him. They couldn't get the ball off him. France won 1-0. He gave the assist to Thierry, but this was his game. He was on another planet, even against Brazil, and that was a really good Brazilian team. And then obviously the final and what happened with Materazzi. This was an education to cover that World Cup, being quite close to him and quite close to the team. And then obviously what he did as a manager, which we never thought he would become. Even himself never thought he would become a manager, let alone a successful one. But he's an incredible character, an incredible person.
as a professional watching him? How is that?
Yeah, right away you know every time he touches a ball, there's something special that happens. And I'm just looking at it from the perspective of the size of Zinedine Zidane and the skill set that he had with his feet. Usually guys that size are not as clean and as tricky and as good as he was with his feet. So then he has the strength of his size, natural, and then he has the strength of his feet. So how do you mark him? How do you get close to him? When you go and try to challenge him physically, he said, no thanks. You're not coming. You're not getting anywhere near the ball. And then when you think, okay, well, maybe I can get him with quickness. No, because his feet were quick too. He can get around you that way because of how skillful he was. He was something else. And maybe because of his personality, that it's just kind of quiet and just kind of somehow he seemed to go under the radar. But he quietly put together one of the best careers in terms of accomplishments and then individual performances. A player of a generation, and yet when we talk of the best ever, doesn't quite come up. And yet we should consider how good Zinedine Zidane was at his very best.
Probably I think one of the best ways to sum somebody like him up is from a player's point of view. I can look at my career, and I think I was pretty good. I did a lot of good things, played in some great teams, won some big trophies. But I wouldn't dream of trying some of the things that he did nonchalantly and on a regular basis. I mean, that just sums it up for me. Somebody who thought they played at the top, couldn't even dream
like a secret
of doing the stuff that this guy does on a regular basis.
Easily.
I wouldn't even dream of trying it.
Yeah, the things that he does easily.
Yeah.
Easily. That gliding. That when I think of Zidane, I think of him gliding on the field. Everybody else is running, he's gliding.
How much would Craig hate this segment?
Dan, if I can add something.
Go on,
Dan, when I remember when he first came with the national team, and then he stayed, and he had a car crash accident just before the European Championship in England in '96. Remember that Aimé Jacquet didn't take Cantona. Well, he wanted to take Cantona, but Cantona didn't want to play as a striker. He wanted to play as a number 10. But Jacquet stood up with Zidane and Djorkaeff. So Cantona decided to not go. Ginola didn't come. The media criticized Zidane for his performances, but also in '98 because he got red carded after the third game. Didn't have the level that everybody expected. But you know how strong he has been. Because we all think with the glamorous, aspect of him, that we saw that everything was quite easy and perfect. Well, it hasn't been. As just mentioned, it was very hard at the beginning in Bordeaux, but also in Juventus. But the guy fought hard. He never gave up and reached the top level because of his character as well, not only because of his skill, and became the top player that he has been from '98. And I would say from the quarterfinal against Italy to 2006 and the Brazil game that in quarterfinal that Jules was mentioning before.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN+.